All Vern Gagne had to do was put the AWA World Heavyweight Championship around Hulk Hogan's waist at AWA Super Sunday 1983. Even if Hulk Hogan would just go to New York like he ended up doing at the end of that year, he still would have made the fans a whole lot happier, so that business after 1985 didn't completely fucking crater, while Vinny Jr. was able to take Hulk Hogan and an assortment of other talents that he plucked from other promotions, including the AWA, and take wrestling to national and international prominence. And Hulk Hogan was at the forefront. By God, was he ever. All kinds of merchandising, all kinds of media appearances, and the 24-inch Python's brother would strangle the wrestling industry and make sure that Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan would stand atop until their relationship fractured. I'm John Rentham with my review of Hulk Hogan, Real American, Episode 2, Hulkamania, a Netflix original series continuing my trek through this episodic, deal where Hulk Hogan tells a bit of the truth and then a lot of lying. Look, he's not the only wrestler to lie. I'm not saying that all wrestlers aren't given into hyperbole. I know what the actual word is, but let's just roll on with it. I do like the fact that they dive into more of the family stuff. Still, I hate Linda Hogan. Hate her. Can't fucking stand her at all. Just ugly on the outside and the inside. The various interviews she has done, the fact she's a fucking crackpot. Hogan at least drew a ton of money. Yeah, he's an insufferable douchebag about it in his goddamn interview, but still, he did draw a fuck ton of money. Still, a few things that made me laugh that I'm going to talk about in this, and I hope you have enjoyed what I've done so far with this series. And as you see these episodes, or these reviews, pop in, I'm just trying to record them in one block, basically. Just have a whole lot of fun. So let's get into it with home video stuff. Him and Linda, their romance is really ticking up. After marry him in Oakland. Boy, what a romantic city that is. And we get, pics and stuff. And I do like the home video stuff that they had. That is nice. And MSG footage. The Garden. And then there are things that I have talked about in other videos that have been talked about also extensively by many that I'm not going to get too deep into. I'm going to talk about a few omissions, though. We get the storage full of memorabilia. The schedule book, that was pretty nice to see. Skipped over being brought in yes, he was brought in by Vince, but the reason he was is Bob Backlund was not going to be the champion much longer, had been the champion for nearly 6 years. The problem is, he'd also lost it to Antonio Inoki briefly in New Japan, but they just decided to omit that, so Bob Backlund has held the championship for nearly 6 years. And he was brought in, basically, he had sat with Bockwinkel and Vern in a hotel, according to Hogan, and actually I have no reason to dispute that some of this might not be true, setting up a whole bunch of, shows where he was going to face Bockwinkel in a cage, and possibly have the title put on him, who knows. The thing is, what people tend to omit about the AWA deal, and I try to explain, just the fact that, it's common knowledge, at least for people that are wrestling historians, AWA had a lucrative sponsor or partnership with All Japan. Hogan, meanwhile, had been going to New Japan since about 1980, 1981, and was getting pretty popular over there. Faced off against Inoki, faced off against, Muda later on in the 90s. He wrestled a lot of people and wrestled a much different style. I mean, he used a leg drop in New York and even in the AWA after he had stopped using the bear hug so much. But he used the axe bomber, the big lariat, in New Japan. And in hindsight, probably should have mixed that up. Had he been using both those, his back might not have been totally fucked up. But he wasn't going to give up his New Japan money, and Vern Gagne also stiffed him on a lot of merchandise that he sold. So there you are. I mean, yeah, Hogan drew a goddamn fortune. And I'm not saying, by the way, isn't given to making up things, but Vern Gagne was notoriously tight with how he would pay people. So, yeah, Bob Backlund loses to the Iron Sheik. They talk about the Iranian hostage situation. And Sheik leaned into it. And Iron Sheik was already well into his wrestling career by this point. Khosrow Davari. I think I might have said that wrong. I'm sorry. But he, was a guardian for the Shah. Came over. This was told on the Iron Sheik in the biography. And Hogan says, I wasn't into politics in 1984. Moments later, they show home video stuff of his dad with a Reagan poster and Hogan doing like this, like doing the thing where it's like, oh, like this. Yeah, you were, Hogan. You just weren't as open about it and there wasn't as much of a chance to find out about it. Reagan, by the way, once again, Ronald and Nancy Reagan, just as evil as the current, criminal piece of shit and first lady that we have in the White House. So, Iron Sheik with Fred Blassie, that was nice footage to see. And Fred Blassie was having a goddamn party as Ayatollah Blassie. And even in his 60s, would have still beat the shit out of any fans that tried to come, try to target him. Bob Costas weighed in briefly. Keith Elliott Greenberg leading in a little bit. And, basically, Hogan says that when he attacked the Iron Sheik, at the bell, I just rushed him. That wasn't planned at all. Let me tell you something, Hulk. If you hadn't actually played business or played ball and done business with Sheik, Sheik would have broke your goddamn leg like Vern Gagne wanted him to and pay him $100,000, stuff like that. Now, Sheik was smart not to do that. One, Vern may have not had to pay him and Sheik would have been out of a goddamn job. The wrestling business would have totally changed and AWA still would have gone down the goddamn toilet because who the fuck did they have in 1984 they were going to lean on? Greg? No. So anyway, he beats Iron Sheik January 23rd, 1984. They spent a lot of time on this build-up and everything, and to be quite honest, it was a big deal. I forgot, maybe I saw like one clip, but I forgot that his parents actually were there, and his dad said he did make the right decision, even if he wanted him to stay in college. Clearly, money-wise, he made the right decision. Noted liar and Vince avatar Bruce Pritchard talks, and I don't buy a single fucking word he says, even if it's a word in the dictionary. Hogan did help bring wrestling to new heights. It was marketing, just as much as Vince Jr.'s marketing and stuff like that. There was a cast of characters that he worked with, and the roster that Vince had in 84, 85, 86, even in 87... was pretty goddamn stacked. I mean, yeah, still into 88, 89. There are people that actually had runs of like 1 or 2 years in WWF at the time that a lot of people forget about, myself included. Ron Garvin had a goddamn run for like about 1.5 years or 2 years. And basically he continued to wrestle various people around on tours. They were on 3 to 4 shows a night. Vince McMahon gambled everything on WrestleMania. I'm not saying he didn't gamble quite a bit, and I'm not saying it wouldn't have put a dent in them, but they apparently were struggling a little bit and were going to sell the video rights until they got to deal with Coliseum Video. But Vince also was spending so much goddamn money trying to take over the world, partly before he was ready. Like, he was aggressive. Bought the Southwest Championship Wrestling, Southwest Championship Wrestling time slot when they were having money troubles. Upseated Mike LaBelle and everything in LA and took over various TV markets, took over stuff from Vern. And Mr. T was also a big part of the WrestleMania success because he was one of the good ones, brother. No, I'm not going to forget that about Hogan. Footage of Vince setting up touring. And probably getting liaisons booked and everything, the dirty pervert that he is. The SNL stint with Hogan and Mr. T the night before WrestleMania. A lot of people forget about that. I did not think they were going to talk about this following thing, the Richard Belzer incident. They didn't talk about it long, but the mere fact that they mentioned it, okay, I'm surprised. Now, Richard Belzer, great as Detective Munch in Law & Order SVU, and a pretty good actor. He was also an insufferable douche when it came to how he talked about professional wrestling. Not as much as John Stossel, who deserved every bit of head trauma that he got. I don't think he actually did get it. I think David Schultz could have slapped him a whole lot harder. And should have, but whatever. Richard Belzer did win a $500,000 lawsuit. Had a house somewhere, I think he called Casa de Hulk, or Casa de Hogan. And that was kind of cool to see that stuff. But yeah, Richard Belzer also was coked out of his goddamn mind at this point. A noted cokehead. Just saying, he was. You could tell by looking at it. I mean, I will say allegedly to cover my ass. But if Mania failed and everything was done, and they were living deposit to deposit because they were getting a little bit lavish. But The main event tag, renowned murderer Jimmy Snuka. It was kind of cool to see Ali, and Piper square off a little bit, because Roddy Piper even told the story when Piper was stepping in, getting into wrestling and everything, and Ali said, during a ring skirmish, he said, "Hip toss me." He did. And a bunch of people that were tied to Ali basically, were all, "What the hell did you do to Ali?" But Ali wanted to, because Ali understood business. So, yeah, renowned murderer Jimmy Snuka, who's burning in hell. Not soon enough for my liking, but I digress. Media appearances. A wild one. Yes, it's a wild one. We get that montage by Iggy Pop. They're set to the Iggy Pop song. And the money got massive. They were suddenly millionaires. They were making good money. Other people were making money. They skipped over a lot of 1985, by the way. They skipped over a lot of the Rock and Wrestling Connection, which, yes, they did talk about in the WrestleMania WWE on A&E biography deal, which I'm not saying they need to recycle that footage, but Cyndi Lauper getting Captain Lou Albano to be on Girls Just Want to Have Fun really kickstarted a whole lot of that stuff well before Hulk came along. And then he faced off against Bundy at WrestleMania 2. And they started to get to where they were spending a whole lot of money. Hogan and Linda. And that he took credit for how the money got elevated. Now, to be fair, if you worked with Hogan or worked on the show that Hogan was on, you were guaranteed to get a lot more money. But you went from maybe getting $1 million a year to bringing home $3 to $4 million a year. Really? How many wrestlers were doing that in the 80s for you, Hulk? And I'm not even saying just him, but Vince. I mean, Vince paid well, but I mean, besides Randy Savage, Andre, Piper. I mean, I'm asking seriously. I don't think Ricky Steamboat got $3 to $4 million a year, and he was there for a number of years. Butch Reed, I'm not saying they didn't get quite a bit of money, but they were also having to spend a lot because they were touring a whole lot. It was 25 days a month. And Jake Roberts should have feuded with him. That Snake Pit talk show that he had where he dropped him with a DDT and the crowd cheered. They didn't talk about that. And working with Hogan did get you a whole lot of money, but God, he's an insufferable douche about it. And money, makes things, or money can make life easier, but it doesn't fix everything. And I'm sure that's the case. If you have issues and everything, like being a fucking racist and getting exposed, or being a lying sack of shit, that can't fix everything, but it would help. And he got into cocaine and booze. It was a lavish lifestyle. Him and Linda got into that. You can tell by looking at Linda that she lived a hard life. No tread left on those tires since about 1991. And they skipped over the exhibition stadium talk. They showed a shot of it, that big old crowd in Toronto, but they didn't talk about the feud with Orndorff. Nothing about the history there. That was a big goddamn deal for Hogan. That was one of the biggest drawing house shows tours that he ever fucking had. They went to Saturday Night's Main Event, the first one of 1987, where they both hit the floor at the same time in that cage match, but Hogan retained because the tie goes to the champion, because Orndorff's too dark and can't be the champion, brother. To be fair, Orndorff also had the neck issue that led to the atrophy in his arm and that kind of stuff, so it might have not worked all that well. But he then, we go back to this talk about his brother Alan. He showed up one day and had been living a bit of a hard life, and he needed some money from Hogan to pay rent. Hogan wanted to take him with him to wrestle and then help and everything and stuff like that, but no, I need rent money, so he did that, and then he got a call. His brother had overdosed because his brother had a hard life. I'm not out here to judge the brother, because I don't know if his brother was actually a decent person or not. I didn't know that he died in the 80s. I wasn't fully aware of that. I knew that he was obviously older than Hogan, but still. And that would be tough. He had to stop it because they were digging too deep. Again, probably going to be your last interview, Hulk. You could just tell all this stuff. You wouldn't be burying your brother. You already did. I'm sorry. It's like Kevin Von Erich. I'm sorry. So, he started to live a cleaner lifestyle. Hulk did, not necessarily. It's unfortunate. Overdoses do take a whole lot of people. But he was doing stuff for Make-A-Wish kids. What about the one that had a really bad smell at SummerSlam 92, Hulk? What about that story? And this was nice to see because you could tell it meant a lot to those kids. Cody talked about it. Probably had to do a few takes to not have him say make a with kids. And it made them feel good. And that's... No child deserves to deal with that. In all seriousness, no child deserves to deal with that. Their parents that voted for Trump, possibly, yeah, they deserve that, but whatever. None of the kids don't. So, they skip over a lot of 86 and everything. Again, the feud with Orndorff and that kind of stuff. They don't talk about the term with Andre beyond him saying at that press conference table, and this will be your last wrestle, which Andre being a hulking individual, ironically. Mania 3 talk, it was 78,000 to 80,000. It was not 93,173. I'm just saying. Hogan saying to Andre, I love you, thank you so much for what you've done for me. And Andre's just standing stoic. And Hogan's trying to say, I don't know if you're going to do business on. Andre's going to do business. Andre is all about doing business. Unless you were Kamala and then he said something racial and then he had to be talked down. Or no, was it Kamala? It was Bad News Brown. I got that mixed up. But, yeah, maybe don't say that kind of stuff. But, whatever. Andre passed away in 93. So, Andre's going to do business. The slam around the world. Nobody had slammed Andre. Except Hogan even had at Shea Stadium. Harley had. I think Connect had. El Connect. Or, no, was it just Connect? I think people in Japan had. I think Harley slammed him on the floor. If Andre liked you, he would go up for you. Kamala had slammed him. So, whatever. They revisited, or they, kind of glossed over a lot of that stuff. Andre would go off to have back surgery. They got the criminal piece of shit, the guy whose brain is eroding and is all dementia-filled Don for this, Trump. And it makes sense why they did. I'm not saying I'm for it, but I'm also not surprised that they decided to do this because WrestleMania 4 and 5 at Boardwalk Hall, adjacent to Trump Plaza. I guarantee you he has no memory of Mania 4 and 5. Nothing. I guarantee you he doesn't. I got a big meeting with Russia, he says. Yeah, your fucking buddy Putin, the Kremlin crackpot. What are they going to do? They ain't going to do shit. So... By the way, I just want to say, if you voted for Trump, fuck you, and just fuck every goddamn person that you know that voted for him. I won't talk to members of my family and some friends that I used to be friends with. If you're that far gone, you're going to vote for that. This ain't about politics. This ain't about left and right. This is about right and wrong. So anyway, I thought about just stopping the show right here because I'm just disgusted by the mere sight of him and the fact that he has not just, fallen over. But he's pumped so full of goddamn drugs, his, destroyed hand and all that. And yeah, I'm getting on my soapbox here. If you don't like it, I don't care. But the thing is they got him here for this, and they showed when he was at least still somewhat coherent, still had assaulted a bunch of women. I say this even though it's out there because I'm covering my ass. But, yeah, we just see a bunch of, we just see a bunch of, footage and everything, of Mania 4 and 5, which they interspersed together, for some reason. Savage won the title at Mania 4 and then lost it at Mania 5 after 371 days. Merchandising went crazy. Then, of course, that goes back to the AWA days, so the t-shirts and stuff like that. But toys, dolls, everything. Underwear, toilets, it didn't matter. Vince was a marketing machine and understood that stuff. And then Linda wanted to have a kid, so Brooke got born. And sometime later, Nick got born. Nick, that terrible driver, that bad individual, who got born in, 1990? So he's going to be 36 years old this year. He wants to get into wrestling. And you thought Horace was terrible. So anyway, Nick stuck by Hulk while no one else did. Yeah, given how you treated Brooke when she became a teenager and even in her early 20s, Hulk, yeah, I kind of think I understand why the hell you support Trump, because he loves his daughter a little bit too much, and so did you. So Natty weighs in about the fact she saw her father on TV more than she saw him in person. Jim the Anvil Neidhart, by the way. And it would be tough for children to have to share their parents with the world. actors, athletes, wrestlers, whatever. It would be tough. And then they go to, my God, they went into the Ultimate Warrior stuff, and they just buried the fuck out of this guy. By the way, fuck the Ultimate Warrior. I'm glad he's dead. As big of a draw as he was for a moment in time, even a few-year period, he deserved every bit of ridicule that he got. Mr. Queering doesn't make the world work. The man that said that Martin Luther King didn't really do anything good, and all the stuff he said about Hurricane Katrina victims and Bobby Heenan's cancer and British Bulldog and all that stuff. And yeah, fuck him, and fuck his goddamn crackpot wife as well. Hopefully the kids are smarter than he is. Not that it will be hard to do that. Now it'll be hard to be smarter than your goddamn stupid mother. But man, they buried him, so my God, those checks to Dana must have stopped a while ago. They haven't done the Ultimate Warrior Award for a bit at the Hall of Fame. I don't think they did at this year's Hall of Fame. I ended up skipping out on some of it because I didn't want to listen to Stephanie, 9/11 is the same as the steroid trials McMahon talk. But they failed to set up Ultimate Warrior's opponents, or proper opponents and feuds, once he won the title. That's the biggest problem. Even if Ultimate Warrior was going to flame out, if they had given him proper feuds, and at least it would have been like, oh, the company gave him something, and he still couldn't carry the ball. They gave him nothing. He feuded with Ted DiBiase on house shows, the Japan Super shows that they did, feuded with Rick Rude at SummerSlam 90, that he had just worked with at SummerSlam 89. And they were still doing only 4 pay-per-views a year, but they weren't giving him a lot of great feuds. Whether he could work or not, if you don't give somebody a great feud and somebody to help, lead them or whatever it is, I mean, you're not going to get anything out of that. They buried the fuck out of him. I mean, Jake Roberts buried him. To be fair, Jake Roberts also somebody that's not exactly the most normal person. He buried him. Various people did. Now, they showed WrestleMania 6, and Ultimate Warrior's like, we need to go home. No, you got to earn it if you want to take my spot. Ultimate Warrior ain't actually here anymore. I'm not going to call him Warrior, by the way. I'll call him by his gimmick name. Because, I'm sorry, if you're going to change your name legally to Warrior, you have a problem. But there was no replacement for Hogan. Yeah, because he buried the fuck out of Randy Savage. So that couldn't happen. He didn't want Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage to have a rematch at WrestleMania 4. Granted, Hogan by 89, 90 was still a huge draw, but Ultimate Warrior was right there and ready, and even if after a year, after 2 years, he had dropped the ball, at least they tried, but they didn't. We see the New Japan Journal, and we go on to episode 3, basically. So, yeah, that is it for episode 2, Hulkamania. Now we're going to get into where he's going to become Hollywood Hulk Hogan. And then we're going to get into the dicier stuff at episode 4. So whenever you see these reviews, just understand I'm trying to get this content taken care of because this is going to be the last modern wrestling related content that I'm going to do for at least a few weeks after today. I'm recording as many of these on Wednesday before work as I can. And then record Dynamite, depending on when you see this. And I'm probably going to be off of stuff for at least a few weeks until sometime later in May. That being said, Hulk Hogan, yes, he drew a goddamn fortune. And they skipped over the stuff with Slaughter pretty quickly. No security concerns, huh, Bruce? But yeah, now that Hogan's champion again, they went back to him because Hogan said nobody could replace him because he didn't want anybody to replace him. Vince, to be honest, should have gotten people ready before he did. He wanted Tom McGee to be the next Hogan. And bless Tom McGee, but god damn it, that'd be like fucking having, goddamn Steve Simpson with the wrestling ability of, Mike and Chris Von Erich. But nevertheless, enough burying of those guys. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. Until we see what other lies Hulk Hogan tells in episode 3, happy trails to you.